everybody, and welcome to today's Experimental Cinematography Techniques for Film and Video webinar. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us. My name is Tom Strad. I'm the lead digital artist of the Creator Space project. So this is based on a mobile digital arts project, and we have our library partners. Just want to thank all our partners in this project. So we have the Canada Council for the Arts. Then we also have our library partners where we have digital arts equipment and access available. So these partners are the Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, Wasaga Beach Public Library. So once again, these libraries house equipment, digital arts equipment, including equipment like this Blackmagic pocket cinema camera. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to talk a bit about experimental cinematography techniques. What does that mean? How does that work? And ideas to think about. And there's a lot of discussion points and some demonstrations, and we're going to really think about pushing things and doing things a bit differently and looking at some different lens options and, filtrations and gels and things and, other approaches we can take to cinematography than kind of the standard camera on the tripod. So really thanks for joining me. And I think we're going to have a really great session. So again, once again, experimental cinematography techniques for film and video. So what I want to do is we're going to start to look at some of these options, and there's these really interesting things. So I have this box right here, and this is a experimental lens kit, and it's really cool because it gives you these you can put different color filters in it, and you can do there's a 160-degree fisheye, there's a 12 millimeter wide, and the 24 millimeters kind of standard lens. And this was really low cost. I think it's $20 or so. But the point is you can get some really interesting options in terms of the lenses. So one of the first ones I have on here, and I'm just going to put this this ISO up a little bit more here. And let me just cut over to it. Okay, so here's this, and I'm just going to change some of these settings so that we can actually get right into frame guide. I'm going to turn this one off. Frame guide, focus assist off. There we go. Okay, so this kind of is a really interesting super fisheye, and I think as you can see, what it's doing is it's creating this super distorted kind of a fisheye idea. So here I am just at the control center here, and look what it does even for me. So this is a very different type of approach, and it's it's not an amazingly like sharp lens or something, but a very different concept, because now I'm like in a bit of a fish eye, right? I'm in a fish bowl. So watch as I am. Here's kind of the regular type of lens, typically what you do like cinematography like, and then this is that kind of experimental idea of like, look at this, we can have a lot of fun. Look what it's doing with like light reflections. And so this is the idea, is to start to think outside the box. How can we make things like fisheye lenses work? How can this help with the story? And and look how, what's great is that we don't have to worry about focus. So this can be a really interesting way. But think about, telling stories. I can do an interview this way. I can talk to you guys this way. And this becomes the whole other lens, the whole other camera. So this fisheye lens becomes the portal. And this is in camera effects. I think that's what's always interesting, is that, you can do a lot of things that are in post-production. You can do these vignette effects. But today's challenge is, what we're going to talk about is how do we do things in camera? How do we make things work in camera? And I think that's always a very interesting way. So, again, that kind of this is how you'd regularly do kind of an interview or talking to me. This is how you can do this kind of an experimental look. Think of this for music videos, for like dance performances, experimental, abstract, live performances. Putting this camera somewhere, and you get a really big wide shot of the room. Like here, and the lens reflections are really neat, because what it's doing here with the lens, look how it behaves with the light. And these are the kinds of flares and distortions we can really play with and make that work. And that's, I think, a really interesting lens to use. So I'm going to just, and this is a micro 4/3 lens, so it's really small. This is what it ends up looking like. And it just goes on like any other lenses. So now I'm going to just put on the what's called the 12 millimeter. So this is kind of a bit of a wide angle lens. So let me just click that on. Okay, and so this is the 12 millimeter. So now we're getting the whole sensors idea. So we still get that kind of a fisheye look, again, very low cost type sensor to work with, or low cost lens, I should say. Covers the whole sensor now, so we're not getting that vignetting effect. And you know, it's a pretty decent image. These, like literally, these types of lens kits can, you know, are under $30. So a really cost-effective way to add kind of these new lens repertoires. It gives, I have to put a lot of ISO. So just kind of a reference of, you know, what am I in terms of the ISO? I'm just going to look here. I think I'm at like 10,000 or something just to get a really good bright image. So it really, you know, they need a lot of light. So this is, you know, great for outside. You know, they're not a very fast lens. They're just a fixed type idea. And there's some focus points, and then we're going to look at, we can actually, so there's some little bit of a focus here, infinity and closer, so you can change a little bit. And there's also like inserts for filters, like little gels and things that we can put on, and how that can work. Okay, so now let's get to the next one, which is called a 24 millimeter in this experimental lens kit. And let's put that one on here, the 24 millimeter. Here we go. And let's just make sure that's on. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so here's the 24 millimeter. So you can see this is a lot closer up. And again, not a bad looking image. And it has this very like kind of higher contrast film type, looks more like a film stock or something. So again, like, you know, look at, this is kind of the kind of normal, the cine lens, and this is with the experimental kit. So it's definitely changed, you know, the color renditions are a little bit different, and it's a pretty cool lens to work with. So that kind of a kit. So working with different lenses is one thing. Then we can also think about other aspects of experimental cinematography can really be how you're deciding to film it. You know, so are you gonna, you know, more on the experimental side, like do we have it on a tripod? Do we go handheld? Do we work with different things like that? Now, one of the options, which can be really neat, is, you know, what if you, and we see this a lot in kind of experimental shots, and a lot of times like in music videos and things like that, where, there we go, I think that's working. You know, you see, you know, shots like this, but what if I'm like, what if I walk around with it? So what if it moves around with me? That's that different kind of perspective thing. So you can literally, what we've seen before in shots is like, you can attach this to somebody, and then as I move around, it moves with me. So you get the feeling of like you're really with me. And you know, this is something too. So if, let's say you're doing a performance piece or a music video, you can have the person, the musician, the artist holding the camera, and they can talk or sing right to the camera. And so, hey, follow me. And it gives this real intimate POV type thing, but you're not seeing what I'm seeing, but you get to see my reactions to things, right? So that's one way. Then we can also do is the flip around. So then I can be moving around and, you know, like looking that kind of a POV, and it really gives a different kind of perspective, the fisheye. So think about that in terms of mounting cameras, how you mount them, where you mount them, and what you do with them can be really effective as well. And again, you know, we can go back to some standard lenses. So I have this one. This is a 7.5 millimeter, more of kind of a standard wide angle lens. So I think a lot with experimental stuff, we're usually working with kind of focal lengths that are, I would say, outside the box, outside the norm of what you'd expect to be working on or working with. And, you know, and that's always a real fun thing. So here's this one. You know, again, a real big fisheye kind of lens, and this covers the whole spectrum. So this is giving me the same kind of fisheye. Now this lens, I think they go for about $150, $200 or so. So it's a little bit more of an expensive, like cine type lens, but it covers the whole sensor in terms of its fisheye versus the other one. But again, just for the cost and the difference. But I think again, we can get the same kind of aspects of if I'm moving around with it, you know, and like you get this kind of idea. And we see this a lot in shots. So like, you know, if you're kind of walking, and even this, it almost feels like I'm walking, but I'm just sitting right now. But you can do these kinds of shots where you're walking. We've seen this in films, and this is that kind of experimental side where you're going into these fisheye lenses, and they can be really close, and you can get really, really right into people and talk and distort. And again, it creates a very different look, very different aspect of what, you know, typically a presentation, what's happening. So this is the thing too with experimental cinematography type techniques, fisheye lenses. Look what it's doing to my face. So this is the lens you're looking at me is a 35mm lens. That, again, this is what we have in our kits for the Blackmagic cinema camera. When you go to this kind of a fisheye lens, the same kind of shot size, it's very different, right? Because here I am like this, and then here I get really distorted, right? It starts to distort my face and skew. So we got to remember that too, that it's going to distort what people look like and what objects look like, what areas look like. And that's to our benefit if we want to, you know, change things and experiment with what things look like. So another technique that's really cool is, so we talked about those placements and working on that, is then we can start to look at, you can get these like little gel samples and things. But these little gels in different colors can go in front of lenses. And there's like a filter spot on this as well. And, you know, and it basically lets us, you know, we can cut out a little piece. So I'm going to just cut out like a little piece of gel. I have some scissors right here. So if I cut out a little piece of gel, and then there's a little like filter part here. Let me just get to that. And what I'm going to do is just cut a little piece of gel. And there's a little slot on the back here. And you can just put like little filters in the back here. So now I'm going to just do it that way. We're going to put this lens, put this back on. Gotta just get the right spot here again. There we go. Okay. And so this is now, I've put a magenta lens, a magenta filter on the lens. And this is what the shot is now. So now we're like this. So by putting a magenta gel, I can change the look very quickly and create this kind of an experimental feeling on any kind of a lens. So, you know, this is another way we can do it. So we're not dealing with color temperature looks, but we're actually putting gels behind the lens in this experimental kit. So this isn't something you can do with any lens, but again, these specific kits, it's the experimental lens kit. You can find lenses like this where you can put gels behind the lens and then, you know, make it a very different look. So, you know, how does this look compared to like the regular lighting, right? And now we're creating this. So all of a sudden I'm in a whole different world, you know, with this kind of a look versus the other one, right? So that's a magenta. We can try a couple other gel pieces. You know, we can go with things like, you know, they're like kind of a tobacco. That can be really interesting. So again, I'm just going to slide this kind of little tobacco. You can see what it's doing to my face here. So it's just kind of a brownish looking filter. Okay, there we go. And so here's this with the tobacco, right? So it gets a lot darker. So we're going to have to, we can go up again a little bit more in our ISO to compensate. And you know, you need a lot more light to deal with these kinds of gels. So it's you know, it's really taking the amount of light entering. But what a cool like spill of light and brown, and what we can do experimentally with something like this with this tobacco filter. And again, it puts a lot of different structure into the image and what it looks like. So that could be a really interesting one as well. So that's the tobacco filter in it. And then we can go into things that are, you know, we can go into like a green. So I'm just cutting a little piece again. So this kind of a greenish one is really interesting in my opinion. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to click that one back on, and we got this greenish filter happening. So there's that greenish, right? And how quickly we can do that. So we don't have to fuss around too much with color temperature, but we can just, get that kind of a look. And again, it's giving me a very green kind of chroma, an interesting, almost filmic, like there's this grain because we have such a high ISO. So the noise is looking quite nice actually. And on the experimental side, there's not, it's a really cool way to go. So again, and then what happens, we can again go back to, a fisheye type lens as well. Let's go back to this one. So, and even as the process of doing this, it's already pretty interesting looking, right? So here's the fisheye with the green, right? So again, it creates a very specific type of look and a very interesting look, and that can work well. Now, on the other side, so if you don't want to use the gels and things, we can also play around with the color temperature itself. So let's not forget that we can still do in-camera things that take us to different color temperatures. So if we have something like this, we can literally go to our record and get it out of here. I'm going to go right to the color temperature, so the white balance. And so we can always play around with the actual white balance of it as well. But you can see it's not as extreme. I'm basically can just go kind of blue. I can go, kind of red or yellowish, more yellowish or more blue, right? And that's another way we can then make ourselves blue. So those are easy spectrums we can hit. We can go warmer, bluer, that kind of thing. But, once we have the gel attached, it's very different. So the other thing we can do is we can also take, if we can take like pieces of gel, so big large sheets, and we can put this over the entire lens as well, and play with materials that are in front of the lens, and then you're getting all sorts of things. You're getting scratches from the plastic surface, and again, a very different look. So putting materials in front of the lens can work as well. So a lot of different looks can be achieved, and I think that's what starts to get really interesting is what kinds of looks can we achieve, and how can we do different experimental looks. So besides the green, we can find maybe another, did purple, green. Let's go maybe with like kind of an orange, or sorry, like a red. Let's try like a red piece too. And you can get sometimes a lot of these like gel sample kits can be really nice. You just get this little like swatch book wherever you buy gels. So usually like photo store or a video store, equipment store will have, wherever they sell gels, they'll have these sample swatch books, so you can kind of figure out what gel you might need when you're going to buy gels. So they should have those available. So here's the red one. So here's just with just a straight red gel. Again, now I can be underwater. I'm in a submarine. So these types of looks can work really well. So that's on the look side. Those are the kinds of elements we can do. So playing with different lenses, different lens structures, wider, longer, putting elements in front of the lens, or in this case with these special lenses behind the lens, and that can really work. So, and then on the other side, we're also looking at the movement. So we can do these POV movements. We can do specifically handheld movements. So more handheld stuff. We can think about where we place the camera. So different placements. So what's traditionally placed. So in experimentation, literally, we want to challenge, where do we put the camera? How do we do an interview? And what can we do with different angles? And it doesn't have to always be very extreme, but it's all about figuring out what you can do to further what you're working on, further the story, further the concepts. And the best thing is, like we always say with in digital cinematography and with this Blackmagic cinema camera, what you see is really what you get. So you have this real good element of being able to see directly what you're getting right when you're getting it, and you're not second guessing. So okay, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm getting. I'm getting the vignette, around the lens, right? So I'm getting that, and I'm getting, it's a red look. So that you're not worried about what it's going to look like, because you literally see what it looks like. So if it's too red, go with less of a red gel, right? If it's a bit too dark or too much of a vignette, try another kind of lens combination, and working with that. And there's some really cool elements that we can do. There's also things that are called lens extenders, and that can be really cool in terms of you can get some real specific uh, perspectives in terms of what how close things are. So we can get into things like macro photography and cinematography. So I'm just going to put another lens on here, and I think we should be able to demonstrate it with this one here. I think has a close focus, or fairly close focus. And I'm just going to get some power over here to this element here. Perfect. Okay, move that back on. Okay, so playing with things, I'm just going to reduce this ISO down a little bit here, because this is a bit of a, so playing with what's in focus and the shallow depths of field. We've talked about this before. I'm just going to open this up a little bit more, and it's always really interesting. So what aspect is in focus? So this shallow depth of field really lets me look. I can focus on the keyboard, like right to the keys. So these are these types of shots when we're, this would normally you'd see like everything in focus. So these really shallow, extreme shallow depths of field, and we can call them, these macro type close-ups, are another aspect of experimentation and different, use of storytelling, is that, we can really zero in on, what we see in the keyboard and make that work as a shot and a specific type of gadget or tool in storytelling. So again, imagine then, so if you're on specifically on the gel, things like, let's see here, so things like words, we can really, so watch if something's out of focus and then I'm making something in focus. This is a great way to further decide where people's eyes are watching and looking, and we can specifically guide people through the whole shot. So again, imagine if it's a specific performance or, an artist. This can be an instrument, and, we're using the selective focus to decide where we're looking at any given time. And that's another great aspect of experimental cinematography, and, doing this selective focus concept, and how do we make that work, right? So again, you can see now, working with the different foreground, middle ground, backgrounds, and deciding what's in focus. And it looks, get a real close perspective. Like these keys are huge, right? So I'm using a 50mm lens. Again, this is available through our kits at the Blue Mountains Public Library and Wasaga Beach Public Library, and using the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. And I get this shallow depth of field, and this is my hand, and making it work. So again, working with elements. So this is one shot, and then working with elements that are going in front. So because it's selective focus, if people are moving in front of this, you get a lot of interesting lens distortions, and trying to work with, what the camera is seeing and not seeing, and the focus is that extreme selective focus. And again, that could be really interesting. How does this go into, again, think of an interview, and, we're working with this kind of a shot, where you see me like this, very, very different type of an angle, low angle, and on my eyes versus, seeing my whole face. So that's a really interesting perspective too, is using that kind of experimental thing. The other thing too is we want to always think about angles. So the low angle definitely, looks up to me. It gives me, kind of a superior complex of the angle. And then, you could be looking down at me, and then it puts the audience in kind of a higher perspective. But these are those kinds of angles that you wouldn't typically see in a documentary, the high angle, the low angle, with the extreme close-up type shot on eyes and things. But look at the emotions we can get, and it's very different. So when you're doing experimental, you have to really stick to the concept of what your visuals are going to be and really stick to that to make sure you stay that way. Because you can still have your kind of normal shot like what you're seeing right now, but you can have that experimental shot to enhance things further. Now, with the experimental footage and types of cinematography and those techniques, like the filters and things, you really, when you're doing it in camera, and that's really what we wanted to look at today, is doing things in camera, is you have to commit to it. You have to decide that's going to be the look, that's how I'm going to do it, and be comfortable with those decisions to make sure you can go forward with them. And that, again, so if you're doing a documentary, you might want to have, as you get into these kind of different experimental angles, you might still want to have this regular shot where you see the whole person, because it'd be hard to do the whole film with just that extreme close-up. You're going to get more and more comfortable as you get into some experimental techniques that you might want to cover an entire film in this kind of experimental techniques and style, with filtration, really close angles or high and low angles, close shots, high and low angles, selective focus, that whole idea. But when you're starting with using these, you still want to consider maybe having some sort of a safety to, just so you have it as a backup if you can film it. But otherwise, it's really great. If you can commit to it, it's a great idea to just go with your style, your experimenting of the cinematography, using these different techniques, and just going with it and making it work, and not worrying about what should be done. So challenging the status quo in terms of what documentaries will usually look like, and changing them up a little bit so that you can do an interview and I can be talking like this, and the camera can be moving up and down, so you can see my face, you can see my eye, it can go to hands and change focus and work with that. It can be on a bit of a side, where is it, right? It can be on the side, it can be it can be more of a profile, and making different things work, and creating different angles and different perspectives in terms of how you're going to tell that story. So again, the main guiding principle, what we always talk about, is making it work for your story. Does it make sense? So, I don't suggest doing experimentation just for experimentation's sake, but doing experimental angles, techniques, and cinematography approaches that help further tell the story. That's really where you get that perfect unity and harmony in terms of the image and story and all of that. So that's really the guiding force there. You want to make sure that you're working on using these principles and these concepts to further enhance the story, and not just doing them because you can. So always ask yourself, why am I doing it? Does it help further tell the story? Is it a stylistic choice? Is that what I want to do? What does the style tell us? What's it contributing? Is it creating a sense of emotion? Is it creating a sense of a temporal sense, like a period? So, we're going back in time, sepia, different gels. Are we trying to create tension? Are we trying to create different POV perspectives? Are we trying to get really close to their subjects in a documentary, for example? And what's it telling? What's it revealing? Those macro close-ups, it can reveal key details, but it could also hide details and show other elements that maybe aren't usually seen. So you can imagine the macro on, let's say, a dancer's feet, that maybe we don't usually get to see that close up, could be really interesting and powerful, because you could see all the movement of muscles and feet moving, for example, in that kind of a shot versus a standard wide shot. So we can really help enhance things through experimentation, and the key is to remember that you're going to make some mistakes. You might not always be happy with the final result, but be confident that what you see in your viewfinder is what you're getting, what you're doing. So that's always the important. Make sure you're happy with what it looks like. That's the important, backup check to make sure that you're happy with what's going on and what it looks like. Then you're doing the right thing and it's going to work. We all love a really cool new type of shot or new approach to cinematography. So that's the key, is to keep experimenting and keep challenging specific standard ways of doing things, and you can reinvent things. And that's what just makes great storytelling, is to reinvent how things are told. And in film, how things are told are ultimately through the camera's perspective. And in experimenting with that perspective, what's in camera filmed can be really exciting. Then there's a lot of things you can do in post-production too, but we really wanted to focus on these in-camera cinematography techniques. If you have any questions or comments, or want to continue the conversations as well, you can always email me, tom@tbmcs.ca. I hope that you can go and take out this kit. So again, this is available at the Blue Mountains Public Library, at the Collingwood Public Library. There's a Canon 6D camera that you can do video with as well. You can take photos with as well. So it's a great tool that you can do a lot of these aspects with as well. And then at the Wasaga Beach Public Library, there's a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera kit as well. You just need to go to our website, tbmcs.ca, do the proficiency test, and then you can gain access to it just through your library card. So if you're a member at those two, Blue Mountains Public Library or Wasaga Beach Public Library, you can access this Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera and try out some of your own techniques. So once again, my name is Tom Strand. I'm the lead digital artist of this Creator Space project. Want to really thank everyone for joining me on this, and I'm just going to have a shout out here to all our partners on this project. So we have the Canada Council for the Arts, then we have our library partners, Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, Wasaga Beach Public Library. Be sure to check out the equipment, and I also want to state that all of the libraries have our digital arts computer stations. So these are iMac computers, 27-inch iMacs that are built to do video editing specifically, and they're loaded with Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve Studio software and hard drives that can handle 4K video seamlessly. So please do check these out as well. So thanks again for joining me. Have a great rest of the day, and you can rewatch this when it's done as well. So you can go over all these concepts, try them out. Again, very low cost ideas of lens filters and using things differently. So please experiment yourself, and I look forward to seeing some of these experimental aspects as well. All the best and take care.